Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Heated Shenanigans Podcast. I'm your host, Scott, and joining me today is former Wyatt family member, former Bludgeon brother, and one of the most respectable, impressive beard games I have ever seen, Erick Redbeard. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully you're on your way to a fine beard yourself.
It's going to take a pretty long time to get there. So, how have things been? What have you been up to, Erick?
A little of everything. I've been kind of transitioning, trying to take acting a little bit more seriously, a little bit away from wrestling. So, working on, acting classes, auditioning, just spreading my wings there and trying to make, it's different. I guess it's vulnerable as the same emotionally putting myself out there, which is something you don't normally see in wrestling. You don't see guys my size, let alone on film, being emotional. So it's been fun. It's been very it's an interesting journey, that's for sure. It's funny. We just did a skit that came out, I think, last year for that. I think you should leave. Then they have a wrestling skit involved, which is pretty funny because it's a wrestling skit, but it's on Netflix and you can check that out. But that was a fun experience, just the comedic improv side.
Well, that's awesome. Has acting been something that you've always wanted to get yourself into?
Oh, I thought about it long and hard, and I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Like when I was a kid, like I loved being in theater, and then I switched to sports, and there was always a fight between my football coach in high school and my singing coach. As far as like I was in a small ensemble group for singing, so like trying to like juggle both of them was nearly impossible because we'd have a football game, when we'd have, the night before, like important meets and practices, and I'd have to miss certain things. So like fast forward, I concentrated on wrestling, did it for years, and I've always wanted to act, and I got my chance to have a good part in a movie. It was Ghost of the Ozarks right after my release. I basically got released and got a phone call the next day asking to be part of this film, and pretty much changed my output of what I want to do with my life moving forward. But I still wrestle because it's fun, and I still love wrestling, and I love that wrestling incorporates the both of acting and sports and action and movement and stunts, and it's a weird melding of the worlds, and it's a lot easier for me to separate them now that I'm not signed to a particular company.
Completely understandable. I had seen on your Twitter in preparation for this that you'd been promoting some music, and I was curious, what would you say your favorite genre of music is and favorite concert that you've attended?
I like rock. I like metal, all types of metal. Whether it's like a atmospheric metal band like Sulcifer, or like a death metal band like Behemoth. And I love live shows. I love watching music because it never stops. You go to a rock concert, the whole time except for a couple of intermissions, it's all music and stage performance. But if you go to a sporting event, it's like you got to break for a commercial here, you got to break for this there. It's not constant. So I don't know. It's just fun. It's for me. It's fun, and I love music, and it takes me on a journey in my head. So, but as far as like favorite concert, I'd probably have to say Iron Maiden in Toronto, just because I'd waited so long to see them, and I found a song, and they were worth the wait.
I freaking love them. And man, music, it's so captivating and it's perfect because it's a release. Whatever your emotion is, whatever you're going through, there's music for that.
100%.
I was very curious though, over the course of your career, what would you say is the best story you have seen told in a wrestling ring? Not necessarily a match per se, but the psychology of what's going on in the ring.
Oh, I mean, that's the fun part about psychology of a match. It's like it gets people invested. Like I'm always a fan of just easy stories of two men fighting in a ring and one wants to beat the other. That's the simple story, right? You can put
Mhm.
lots of layers on it between, with storylines or whatever, but being a big guy, I'm always a fan of big guy, little guy. How does the little guy who's getting the crap beat out of him, supposed to overcome this giant? How is he supposed to win in a believable way? What does the big guy do to screw up? What does the small guy do well? So, like, to me, those stories are fun for me to watch when they're done correctly. And, like, that's what I always loved about wrestling. And, like, then when it comes time, let's say this big guy's always picking on the little guys. And, because I go back to, there's a reason that UFC has weight classes. Because people that are supposed to be at the top of what they're doing, there's no way that the smaller guy's going to compete. It's not fair. But in wrestling, somehow it's everything's fair. Everyone overlooks that, which I think takes away from it for me as just a fan of wrestling. But it's the way it is. It's the new era of wrestling, and everyone's equal. And to me, you have to be more creative in how you set up matches, because otherwise, how many times can the big guy lose to the smaller guy? It's all optics to me. It doesn't matter how great of a wrestler you are. It's like, if I'm wrestling a small guy, I'm not going to be able to put on holds that I can put on a guy that's my size. Because if I try to put it on a smaller guy, the hold's going to look silly, and the guy's not realistically going to get out of it. Which is probably why you don't see me put on a lot of these, figure four leg locks and all this. But that's just me personally, and what I take out of the psychology of matches and what I look for when I'm watching as a fan.
Oh, excellent. I mean, you never stop learning, like throughout professional wrestling. And speaking of learning, over the course of your career, Erick, what would you say is one lesson that you learned in professional wrestling that you didn't expect to learn, and how did it change your career afterwards?
Uh, I think it's just be open to ideas. Be open to everybody's ideas. Your idea is not always the right idea. Just be open, and I think once you open your mind to things and relax, I think that's kind of what changed in my head, where open your mind, relax. There's no right or wrong way to do what we do. Uh, Obviously, stuff can look really bad at times, and you got to fix it. But that's all your own, per se, what you want. It's no different than an artist, does some abstract art. He might think it looks bad. Other people might love it. But in his heart, he's going to change it the next time he does it. So, yeah.
Say, I think a pretty good example of that would be the invention of the DDT, which was a complete accident. Jake fell back with the guy, and it went on to be one of the most recognized and used maneuvers in professional wrestling.
That is true. Nothing like somebody's whole body weight bringing you down to the ground head first.
What would you say, though, from your time in the WWE with the Wyatt family? What was your favorite part of that run in the Wyatt family? What part did you really enjoy the most?
I think I loved the dynamic between having, like, finally you have a stable, like, in this. It was basically the start of this new era of everybody's a pure wrestler, and then you have the Wyatts, who are these giants, and these giants that can move, but and it's always the story of, like, how are you going to stop this monster, like the Michael Myers story. So I think that's what I loved about it, and I love the fact that the cult leader, you know, in Wyndham, I loved his dynamic with us because it's like, well, why are these two guys following him when they can just snap him like a twig and go off on their own? What do they need him for? You know, so like I love kind of like the not knowing, and you know, when it came time for matches, you had to beat these monsters to get to this other guy to shut his mouth, but then you know we're just so giant that we just keep getting up and coming back no matter what. So without having to you know be this weird you know horror movie, it's just kind of just life. You know, you keep knocking us down, we're gonna keep getting up. In order to put us down, you got to put us in the hospital.
Let's say when I first saw you guys debut, I got very strong Devil's Reject vibes, which I love because it's one of my favorite movies. And I was like, man, this is so captivating to watch because just all the details. And I don't know how much say you guys had into the attire and the aura of all of your characters, but it really reached out and resonated with the audience. And I thought you guys did a marvelous job with that.
Well, the attire for that was 100% us. Like it was John wearing his you know indie gimmick with his jeans and his you know messed up clean. I don't know how it looks so messy, but it was so clean. He spent so much time on that thing every time, making his you know A shirt look nice and fresh, and you know the Hawaiian shirts, and then you know me just happening to have some coveralls because you know Michael Myers and Slipknot, and you know just the ever changing masks in the background. You know, it just worked, and you know it was a fun time.
It was a perfect storm. And I mean, you and Brodie went off to become the Bludgeon Brothers. And I really would have liked to have seen you guys get a longer run as a tag team. I didn't really think you got to hit your stride with what you could have done. Were there any scrapped plans that you could discuss that we never got to see?
So before the SummerSlam where we lost, which was like I think the second to last match of the Bludgeon Brothers, the one where I got hurt, and then like 2 days later we gave out the bells, and I think that was the last time the Bludgeon Brothers was a thing because I went off and had surgery for a torn bicep. But like 3 days before that, I remember Vince coming up to me and saying that he wants to like put me singles, and in my head I'm thinking, well, why? Like we have so much more to do with this tag team, and like, what are you going to put me singles to just get lost in whatever because you just don't have nothing for me? So I don't know. Like you know, I was upset when I heard that, and then you know what ended up happening. Luckily, we got to tag again. You know later on, but you know without the Bludgeon Brother attire. But you know it was what it was, and you know it was a fun run because you know we were you know clicking. You know probably the most we had ever clicked as a tag team, and just I could only imagine, you know, given the longer run and some longer matches, I think they would have been pretty memorable.
Oh, absolutely. Like you guys, again, like just when you guys came out, immediately drew attention. It was a spectacle to see, and again, it was something I really wish could have gone a little bit longer because I thought there was more meat on the bone for what you guys could have done.
And that was until I got released and got to do my own entrance music. That was probably my favorite of the entrance music because that was the only one I actually had a help in a say in.
That was pretty dang good music too. I was also curious though, within the confines of your career, what would you say is your favorite failure that sets you up for success later?
My favorite failure that set me up for success. And this is while I was on the road in the roster.
It could be just or in life in general, whichever is.
Yeah. Favorite failure which set me up for success. You know, I like to think I think getting released to me was a failure in my head on myself. because I take 100%. Like, if something doesn't work, I blame myself. I don't blame creative. I do whatever they ask me to the best of my ability. If they say talk, I'll go out there and talk. If they say don't say a word, I go out there and don't say a word. I try to do things to make myself interesting without having to, with whatever parameters they give you, whether it's a squash match or a match with time or whatever they ask. So it's funny when you talk about failure. I think it was when the cage thing didn't work, and I had pitched so many different things. I was upset because I was just coming off like a run where I was able to open my mouth, speak, actually have some character, and they kind of just swept it underneath, my feet and said, "Okay, never mind all that. You're not going to be working with main eventers no more. You're just going to do squash matches." So in my head, I think that not working was a failure to me. I remember going to Heyman, I think it was the last live event we ever had. So it was in DC. I was going to work Drew. Drew was going to kill the cage. It was only going to be like a 2-minute match. I just lost to Drew and then, maybe tell a story about something after that. And I remember going up to Heyman, who was head of creative at that time, and I said, "Hey man, I feel like I failed. I feel like this didn't work because of me. I gave all these ideas, nothing worked. Am I okay? Is my job safe?" And he looked at me and he said, "Oh no, you're good. You're good." Well then, a week later, everything got shut down, and then I think it was a month or two later, everyone got released. So in my head, that was a failure. But then, I started doing the acting stuff, and then now I'm wrestling a lot more, and in my head, I'm like, I think people get too hard on themselves because what you think is a failure is the way it's supposed to go, and you pick up the pieces and you keep moving forward, and you just keep doing what you do, and don't let anybody else dictate what is on you. If that makes any sense.
It makes 100% sense to me. I mean, I've sat in that situation before, not being released from a major company, obviously, but dealing with a terrible situation and trying to make the best of it, because you can't always control everything that happens to you in life. And it's about making the best out of what you can control. But before we go ahead and wrap this up, is there anything that you've got coming up appearance-wise that you want to make sure your fans know about, how they can find you at upcoming events?
So June 10th, I'll be in Oakfield, New York for IWF Wrestling at the Oakfield softball fields. I think that is what it's called. Look up IWF Wrestling. Look at my social medias. You'll be able to find it. The next week, on the 17th, I'll be in Seminole Hotel Casinos in Hollywood, Florida. Connor, Ryan Perimeter, Big Con from Impact is doing a benefit for veterans. So Tommy Dreamer will be on the show. Tom Latimer, Camille, Tanaka, a slew of other folks, all benefiting the wounded veterans. So that you can check out on my social medias at Erick Redbeard. I'll be posting stuff about that if you want to attend. Also check out season 3 of I Think You Should Leave on Netflix and catch a glimpse of this. I always pitch out watch Ghosts of the Ozarks. You can catch it on Amazon, Tubi, any kind of streaming. David Arquette's in it for those that love the old WCW heavyweight champion. But that's what I've been up to, and it's been a great chatting with you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, guys, for Scott here at Heated Shenanigans Podcast, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you on the next episode, guys.